You joined us for Rain of Blood, and together we made it rain bigger and better than we could have ever imagined. So now, join us for a second blazing inferno of knowledge and exploration. You're listening to Rain of Fire, the scorching sequel event to Rain of Blood, where we're going to delve into the world of fire play education and safety as we prepare for the upcoming Rain of Fire event. Join your host, Miss Kitten, Radically Dark, and Ember Solaris as we ignite your curiosity and stoke the flames of passion with discussions, interviews, and authentic insights from around the globe. Together, we're three flames united in one mission to make quality kink education more accessible and open pathways to conversation and connection about edgeplay topics around the world. But before we dive into these sizzling topics, a content warning. Rain of Fire discusses mature themes, explicit content, and practices related to BDSM and fireplay. So listener discretion is advised, and this is an adult-only podcast. Other topics may include mental health, trauma, consent, and more. So please be sure you're in a good spot to engage in these topics before continuing to listen. So, grab your fire gear, stoke the flames of curiosity, and let's embark on this crackling journey together. Welcome to Rain of Fire.
Hey, amazing firebugs. I have a really exciting podcast for you today. It's a new week and we are talking on branding, but we're going to expand the theme a little bit to another extreme and talk about cold branding today. I have OzTheThird all the way in my dungeon virtually, who's come to join me to chat to you a little bit about this amazing idea, and I'm absolutely in love. I'm smitten. I've spent the whole weekend telling my friends about this kink and getting some very weird looks from my family. So I'm really excited, and you probably aren't as excited as I am, but I'm super excited. But as before I get in here, it's super welcome from the Rain of Fire team, and thank you for joining us, and thank you for agreeing to chat to me and making time in your diary. I really appreciate it.
Hi, Miss Kitten. Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here with the Rain of Fire and your listeners, and happy to be talking about something that I'm really passionate about.
Yeah, I'm super passionate about it. I've literally done this whole rabbit hole deep dive the whole weekend, and I've just come up smiling every time. But before I go into too much about that, let's start off about how you found BDSM, and you went from being an everyday muggle in a muggle world and totally vanilla to exploring these kinky avenues that have led you down this path.
Sure. I was one that joined the lifestyle later in life. I read about it. I studied. I had a lot of curiosity about it for the longest time, but never took the plunge. It was not until after I divorced my wife of almost 20 years, and after several attempts of trying to get her to, hey, this is something that I would be interested in exploring, and her not wanting to, and when we finally, for other reasons, ended up separating, that was when I said, okay, now is the time, and that's when I started getting into the lifestyle. I've been really blessed. I have had a number of great mentors and teachers who have instilled in me the sense of safety, of negotiations, of consent coming first before anything else. And so that's just been something that has changed my journey in this lifestyle quite a bit. Very quickly, I fell into learning things, and I was a sponge. I was told that I could learn just about anything that people put in front of me. And being a chemical engineer by education, starting to play with elemental forces was something that really got me really, really interested. So I do play quite a bit with fire. I play with liquid nitrogen. I play with electricity. So my wife and I, we've been dubbed elemental players a few times by different people. We also have come up with ways of doing waterboarding while minimizing the risk involved in the activity. So again, like everything in this lifestyle, like you said, I got into the rabbit hole and I just kept going, and here I am.
I love that. So what was your first kink? I mean, obviously you found these amazing elemental forces as you got more involved, but what was your first kink in BDSM? What was the first thing that captivated your interest?
I think the very first one that caught my eye was electricity, very quickly followed by fire.
Electricity is the one kink for me that I'm super useless with and I'm super terrified of. Like, it's the one thing that literally reduces me to tears. I have managed to knock myself out with a very strong power box in my younger days when I wasn't as careful or as I didn't have as much self-preservation as I have now. And I woke up on the dungeon floor, and since that experience, I just haven't touched it again. So I play with it sometimes as a top. I have a really incredible violet wand. She is 100 years old. She is a
Nice.
really phenomenal piece of equipment. But I have to say, she's probably the one thing in my house that I'm super terrified of, and I have super respect for. So great respect for your electricity, and that is something I think will always be a hard limit for me. I do believe you can light fire with electrical current with electricity. Oh, tell me a little bit more about that.
You can. There, some of the, even though the violet wand, there are some of the attachments, some of the probes that you can put that they can generate quite a big of a spark, and it's not very hard to start a fire with those. And since we were talking, I think that one of the main topics we're going to be talking about is branding. Also, we should not forget that there is a branding attachment to the violet wand that you can actually use to also brand people with it. So I just think that electricity in general gives you so many different possibilities. But I have to say that maybe even before my joining the lifestyle, when I was still in college, I was somewhat of a pyromaniac because I always loved finding new ways to start flames. I've started flames with sodium metal. I've started flames with chemical reactions and different things. Of course, in a controlled environment in the lab with all the safety around it. But it's just been something that has always fascinated me. So I think I've always been a firebuck, and when I joined the lifestyle, it just I found an outlet for it.
And talking a little bit more about fire, what are some of the kinks that you really love, and what are your favorite things to do with those flames?
First, I think it's that sensation that you're the entire time that you're playing with fire, you're playing with a wild animal. It's something that that at any point in time you can lose control of, and to me that keeps me on my toes and excites me at the same time. I love doing the up close and personal fire, the fire touching, the fire bubbles, fire mousse. I do fire cupping as well. I do but I also do the bigger fire. I do like fire flogging and things like that.
I haven't quite got to fire flogging yet, but I'm loving the fire bubbles. I think the fire bubbles they're just absolutely fantastic. And there's something that's really arty about fire bubbles for me. You can really set a scene and create drama and you can create a whole atmosphere with them, which I just absolutely love. So as a sadist, I really appreciate that, because I think they're really theatrical and dramatic. And then as a bottom, I was quite surprised, because I'm probably not what people would consider essentialist on any level, but I'm really enjoying the intimacy and the warmth and the gentleness of some of the massages and the ways you can use wands. So I was quite surprised by that. I didn't think it would ever be something I'd admit publicly. But there is a gentle side to it, and I think it can be really like a warm hug, provided the safety's there and you have all the information and you are skilled at the task. But otherwise, it might be more than a hug. It might be a trip to the ER. But it's definitely very intimate, and I think half of that comes from being so present while you are participating in the task. So we're coming today to talk about cold, though. So which is a little bit off topic, but I think it fits in because we're talking about a lot of fire branding. So I stumbled across your profile because you have some nitrogen brands. So please tell me more about this and tell me how they happen and all the information that you want to give me. I'm like a sponge. Please talk to me.
Now, to me, again, you were talking about the potential trip to the ER. In this lifestyle, everything that we do, it's about understanding the risk of what you're dealing with and finding ways to do it, exploring the sensations, exploring the opportunities, while at the same time mitigating those risks. So the same thing with liquid nitrogen. Being, as I said, a chemical engineer by education, I had the opportunity of working with liquid nitrogen in labs, and it always fascinated me, the ability that it had to almost instantaneously freeze things. So, in college, we did all the traditional things. We froze a banana and used it as a hammer to drive a nail and those kinds of things. So when I started thinking about what, the ways that we could do this and use this in the lifestyle, I heard that somebody was doing liquid nitrogen branding, and I'm like, that's actually quite interesting. I had already heard about using ice with salt to do some type of branding, or using dry ice mixed with rubbing alcohol as a way to create that coldness, but you're limited on how cold you can get with that as well. So, but then when I heard about liquid nitrogen, I said, okay, this is actually fantastic. You have an incredibly cold medium that you know exactly what temperature is going to be, because that's one of the beauties of it, is you have incredible control. Liquid nitrogen is always at minus 320 degrees Fahrenheit if it is, at the point that it starts to evaporate. So that means you know exactly what temperature your brand is going to be if you let it sit in the liquid nitrogen long enough to equalize the temperature. Then at that point in time, the approximate thermal conductivity of the skin, and how long it takes for cold or heat to get through those layers of skin and get into functional tissue. That's what you want to avoid. So I limit my branding exposure, my contact time to 10 seconds. That way we don't get into any of that functional tissue. We stay within the 3 layers of skin. And that way you can give somebody that opportunity to have something that it can be a decorative thing, but it's also a sensation. It's also, for many people, an almost instantaneous subspace. It's amazing to watch. Sometimes when the brand touches their skin, I have actually seen the pupils just immediately contract to pinpoints, and the person goes, just enjoying and flying high in that 10 seconds of a contact. It's incredible to be able to see that happen. To me, the biggest issue that you have to think when it comes to branding in general, but also with liquid nitrogen branding, is as the person doing the branding, I don't know your body. I don't know your skin. I don't know how it's going to react. I don't know how you heal. I don't know if you tend to scar. I don't know if you tend to form keloids, or if you have any other skin condition or situation that may cause the brand to react, or may cause your skin to react to the brand or to the exposure to the extreme cold. So it has to be that dialogue, that conversation. And I also say that this is very clearly a case of prick when it comes to the bottom: personal responsibility, informed consensual kink. I can tell you everything that I possibly can, but in the end, the person that's receiving the brand has to make that call. Is this something that I'm ready to do? Is this something that I'm willing to take the risk? What if this becomes permanent? It can. You never know. But traditionally, liquid nitrogen brands, because we control that exposure, and I can do it in second increments, I can actually make it last as long as a few months, up to a year and a half. Again, but that's in averages, and that nobody is a true average. But I have had people that I've done brands for just 3 to 5 seconds, and that the brands have lasted couple years, 2-3 years. I have people that I've branded for 10 seconds, and the brands only lasted a few months. That's the kind of the rolling the dice of it.
I think you said so many things. I just have to backtrack to the first thing that caught my attention.
No worries.
I mean, who gets to go to school and freeze a banana with liquid nitrogen and hit a nail in? I mean, that sounds like the best day ever. Like, I would be so up for that. Please pick me. I want to be in that class. So the idea with liquid nitrogen has always been in the back of my head, this like Terminator thing. I think they freeze the body with liquid nitrogen, and then they shatter the whole guy's body. on Terminator, and he shatters into a million pieces. I mean, how realistic is that in comparison to what really happens with liquid nitrogen?
I can actually say that that's, to some extent, that's one of the characteristics of frozen objects that we use in the play, because something else that I do is I do frozen flower flogging. I take a flower, a full bloom, and I dip it into liquid nitrogen until it completely freezes. When I take it out, it's solid. It basically looks like glass, and then you hit the body with it and it shatters, and it at the same time it makes that noise as if you're being hit with glass. It's a little bit of a mind fuck in that sense, because you feel that you're gonna be shredded, you're gonna have all these little cuts, and you don't. And at the same time there's the cold that comes with it. So yeah, I think you can imagine that it's possible. I think that, if you had a whole body made of liquid metal like the Terminator and you try to shatter that, it would take quite a bit of an impact to shatter that. But could you shatter it? Possibly.
I'm glad we've kept my childhood fantasy of shattering human beings alive. We don't want to dash all my dreams in these podcasts.
Oh, not all of them.
Not all of them, just a few of them. The other thing that you mentioned that really is resounding in all the firework I've done. So fire is a relatively new kink for me. It's not something that I've had a huge amount of experience with, but my sort of fire play has been restricted to building a fire whip, to creating a play around that fire whip. So before Rain of Fire, for me, that's basically all I'd really done. I didn't even know that other stuff existed. I'm now like a kid in a candy store, so I'm probably in a bit of frenzy with fire too. But what comes home to me every single time that I light something up is that personal responsibility as a top or as a bottom. And I think that it's probably the first kink that I've participated in where I feel it so clearly. And the personal responsibility, as a bottom, committing to the process, understanding the risk involved, and that this could have life-changing effects. Whether the brand is on me for a week or a month or 15 years, or that something could possibly go wrong and that I would need serious medical attention. So, and I don't think there's another kink that I've done that has been as clear about the personal responsibility. So I love that you brought that in there. And I definitely think it's one of those things that it's the one kink that everybody in the room has to have a voice for. It's not something you can just agree to because it seems like a cool idea and you want to be included. It's something that you've got to really want from the bottom of your heart. Because when it goes wrong quite badly. So I loved that you brought that in, and I thought that was really quite amazing. I'm obsessed with hitting with flowers. I think that that's a brilliant idea. I do it anyway. I think there's nothing better than some nice long-stemmed roses with spiky branches for CBT or for a good thigh spanking. I think those just amazing, and I think those tick all the boxes. So if you had to freeze them, I would imagine that they would be a bit thuddy as well. I think the first sting in my mind is a bit stingy from the cold, and then I think there would be a heaviness to it after the first lot had broken off, and it would be more thuddy than a normal set of roses. So I just think that's beautiful. And what better way to enjoy an impact session than to totally destroy a bunch of roses on somebody's ass? I think that's incredible. So I also think, sorry, I'm a bit all over the place because this is something I'm very excited about.
That's okay.
So going back to the personal responsibility thing, I think you mentioned knowing your body, knowing about healing. And I think also then it comes into the top doesn't go home with you. So the person that is having the brand needs to have an idea of the healing. And I often find with any kink that breaks the skin and that is a process through healing, the healing can be very empowering if your self-care is good. But a lot of the time, self-care is something that you need to learn, and you only really understand what you're consenting to when you've healed the wound. So I definitely loved what you said about knowing your skin and knowing your different skin types. Is there a way to look after your nitrogen brand that is more recommended than normal care?
So before I answer that, let me just back up to something that you mentioned about the flowers because it's something that I'm really passionate about. And to go back to what comment that you made about fire before, there is an element of you can use that flower as just a flogger and just directly impact and hit. Another way to do it, you can get really up and close and you can crush that flower with the palm of your hand against a person's skin. And you want to talk about connection. You want to talk about having that moment, much more sensual element of it. So you can intermingling the two of them creates quite a bit of an amazing sensation. Now, talking about the caring for the brands, I normally when I do the class and I offer people brands, I have pre-prepared exactly for that reason, because the level of understanding of how to care for a burn or for a brand is so uneven across the population. I prepared a little card that has the basic instructions on how to deal with it, and that comes in a little baggie that has 1 sachet of burn gel that has some lidocaine in it, in case you're not a masochist and you don't want to feel the pain at the peak after your skin thaws and it recognizes that something happened, and then your nerve endings start screaming at you. If you don't want to feel that, you have that burn gel in there. As soon as the brand is done, apply that burn gel. The lidocaine is going to start numbing the area. By the time you would be feeling that peak, you're not going to feel that pain as much. It's going to be more like a dull ache. And to be honest, after an hour or an hour and a half that you have had that brand done, it feels at most like a sunburn. So that burn gel is there for that first initial sensation. Then the second thing in the little baggie is a pack of something called Aquaphor. Aquaphor is normally used as a way to protect the skin, and when it comes to it's used in babies when they have diaper rash and things like that. But Aquaphor is amazing for taking the moisture away if the brand starts to blister. So when you start, first signs that you're starting to blister, you apply that Aquaphor. There's a little sachet in the bag to get you started, but I recommend that if you've gotten a brand, probably you should go and buy some Aquaphor because you're going to need more than that one little sachet. But keep Aquaphor on it. That's going to help drain that blister a whole lot faster and help dry it up so that it doesn't pop, because that to me is the worst possible scenario. Is now if you actually get to the point where that blister pops, now you have an open wound. And for that, in the same package, I also put a little sachet of antibiotic ointment to get you started. And I make it very clear, the moment that the blister pops, now you have an open wound. Now your concern is minimize the risk of infection. It's much more about that than about protecting the shape of the brand. So again, it's about understanding the risk and what is the priority at that point in time. But so to me, what I try to do is I try to level everybody to that basic understanding of the care for the brand at that point. And again, when we talk about the comparison between fire branding and liquid nitrogen branding, fire branding, 99.9% of the time, the skin comes off when you brand. With liquid nitrogen, 99.9% of the time, the skin does not come off with the brand. The skin gets frozen in place, and that skin actually becomes part of your brand. It becomes part of what makes it look the way it does. So that's another big difference between the two. And understanding that makes it very different. The way you have to heal, the way you have to treat that brand while it heals is also important.
Yeah, you covered quite a lot in the beginning, talking about that nitrogen sits at a steady temperature, which makes the control of the branding, I think, a little bit easier. I think a lot of the time with fire branding, we can't always control the temperature that's coming out the item that we're using on the skin. So, like a cauterizer pen doesn't. By the time that pen's been running for 20 minutes, it's definitely getting hotter. You can actually see them; they get so hot that the little wire pieces bend. So you're going to have a totally different depth. You're going to have a totally different healing rate with every poke. So it's really hard to get consistency. That's the one thing that all the nitrogen branding has, is that beautiful consistency of the entirety of the brand. It really looks good. I mean, I'm sure that's not a first time mistake. I'm sure that is through practice and through understanding and through knowing how to use the tools. I also noticed that, I mean, because it's not done by hand, it's done with a strike iron or something similar to that. I might have the wrong word. Where do you get your strike iron from? How do you create those shapes? How do you get involved in that?
So I started with basically just the ones that I thought would be cool to have. And then from there, it's progressed to every time that I would do a class, somebody would say, oh, I wish you had this, or I wish you had that. And then my collection has grown. I think I have probably 40 or more brands today that I offer when I do my classes. In the beginning, and most of them came from places on stores on Etsy that do brands for steaks, which is actually something that I didn't even know it was a thing until I started looking into branding. But some high-end steakhouses, they like to brand their steaks with their personal logo or whatever, and they do that. And one of the ways to it's basically the same level of depth of the channel and all that we would need for our type of branding. So that's how I've been doing this. I basically would go into these Etsy stores and buy steak brands with different designs. Of course, not every time I could find the designs that were more specific to our lifestyle, like, for example, the Triskelion or other things like that. So I've had some of them custom made as well. And as of late, I actually, in one of my classes, I had someone attend who said, hey, I would love to try my hand at making brands. And since then, he has made 3 brands for me, and they are amazing. And I recommend him for anybody. If anybody wants to know who it is, they can message me on FAT. I'm OzTheThird there, and I will give you the reference. But he's been doing a great job of making those brands for me. He's here in the U.S., out of Las Vegas, Nevada. And he does an incredible job and has been actually able to match the price that I was getting those brands from those Etsy shops that are coming out of China. So.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you definitely can get them, and it is definitely something that's worth working towards. I love the steak story. Obviously, in the country that I live in, I don't quite think we've reached that level of steak service or dinner service. But I know that I've reached the end of my life when somebody serves me a branded steak. It's a great way to practice strike branding, though, to be honest with you. Like I could see myself doing that on a Saturday afternoon over the fire. I might terrify my guests a little bit, but it actually sounds like quite a fun idea. And I love the fact that you can actually personalize it, and it can be something that is yours and that you put some intent. I also quite like the idea that you have to order the brand, that it's not super easily available, so that there really is some intent behind the process of getting the brand on you, and it's a bit of a journey. I think anytime you put some work into something, it means more. So yeah, I'm loving it. I'm definitely going to hit you up for that number and see if I can connect with the guy and see if we can get some fun stuff our side. Talk to me a little bit about safety for liquid nitrogen and what things are super important and what are like the big do not do's in playing with liquid nitrogen.
So I think that the biggest is acquiring and storing the liquid nitrogen. Let's start with that. In order to do so, you have to have a container that is designated for it, and that's called a dewar. The dewar has some characteristics that are unique to it. One, it's the heavy insulation because of the huge temperature differential between the liquid nitrogen and the outside temperature. So it has very thick layers of insulation, which means that when you think about a 1 liter dewar, it looks like it's something that would hold almost 5 liters. You think about a 10-liter dewar, it looks like something that would hold, 50 liters. It's really a lot bigger because of all the thermal insulation layers in between. The other big characteristic of a dewar is it allows for continuous evaporation. It never fully seals, and that's by design, because liquid nitrogen at room temperature is going to be continuously evaporating, because from minus 320 degrees to no matter what is your room temperature, be it all the way into the single digits Celsius or all the way into 30 or 40 Celsius, that liquid nitrogen, for it doesn't really make that much of a difference. It's a huge difference, and it's going to continuously evaporate. So you have to allow for that. So the dewar is designed to allow that continuous evaporation, and that's for safety, because otherwise it will become a bomb. If you go to buy liquid nitrogen, you have to have one of those, otherwise they won't sell it to you. That's number one, safety. So I'm stop there and see if there's any questions from you on that.
I love the. It's like I come from Africa. We're slightly less safety orientated on like a good day. So I just love the way you phrased that. Like it really appealed to me. I have a big smile on my face because in my head I'm very clear now that if I don't have this thing, I'm going to explode. So you put that in such a beautiful graphic way. I could envision the whole thing. I could also envision me taking a coffee flask and dying on the way home. So I'm very clear in my head that a dewar is the first thing that I need, and it's on the top of my list, and I need to tick that off. So I love that, and I think that's the reality of this kink is that it's a bit of a primal element that you're playing with. It's something you don't really want to mess with. So making sure that you have the basic safety things, and a dewar is obviously the most important because you don't want to be a bomb.
That's number one. Then number two, again, and that goes back to everything that we do in this lifestyle. It's knowledge is our best protection in terms of mitigating or minimizing the risk of what we're playing with. Liquid nitrogen has this amazing characteristic that's called the Leidenfrost effect. It is so cold that the moment it touches a surface that is at the higher temperature than what it is, it immediately evaporates. It forms a vapor barrier between itself and that surface. The problem is if that surface is stationary, so if it's pooling on a table, right, that initial contact causes the evaporation, but then the next layer pushes through that vapor barrier, and then you have direct contact with the liquid and the lower temperature. So what the Leidenfrost effect allows us to do is, as long as you keep that liquid nitrogen moving, it never gets at the contact surface. It never gets cold enough to actually burn you. So one of the things that I do during my classes and demos, I will pour liquid nitrogen down my arms or down somebody's arms, or I will throw liquid nitrogen on them. As long as they don't have anything that can stop. So I always joke about this. I say, unfortunately, you're going to have to get naked because I don't want you to have, a bra or a panty and anything. Those hems are going to stop that liquid nitrogen, and it's going to stop there. It's going to burn you. So the safest way to do it is unfortunately naked. Oh, so sorry. But so it's about understanding the risk and the characteristics of the material that you're dealing with, and then how to find a way to operate it safely. And the Leidenfrost effect gives us an incredible tool to operate with the liquid nitrogen.
Loved listening to you talk about that. When I started playing with fire on my own body, I burned myself first. I was my first victim. It really took me some time to become accustomed to the medium that I was working with. Fire rises up, it travels in a certain direction. And, like there's certain things that it needs to grow, there's certain things that it needs to die. And just playing with the medium, and I did for sort of 3 weeks repeatedly. I had no hair on my arms for most of May and June, but just getting to understand the principles of the medium and how it moved and how I could work with it and how I could work with it to a certain extent, and then also having it in a quantity that was very minimal so that I couldn't do any damage while I was doing this exploration was super important. So I just loved hearing you mention about the qualities of the medium, because I think that's so important, and I think understanding them and respecting them and having an idea of how it works is so important. But you don't know what you don't know. So and unfortunately nobody has like a stockpile of liquid nitrogen to kind of lend us some to sort of test drive. So this is definitely something that I would advise people to research a little bit more. What do you pour the liquid nitrogen in from the dewar when you're using it in the class? Is there something that you can decant it into, or do you put your flowers and everything straight into that dewar?
No, I try to keep my dewar as clean as possible, try to avoid any residue in it, because I want the liquid nitrogen as it's coming from the source. Normally I buy it from industrial gas companies. I want that dewar to be as clean as it possibly can. So no, I pour it from the dewar into containers. Unfortunately, I'm a chemical engineer, and one of my least favorite materials in this world is styrofoam, because it doesn't degrade over hundreds of years. It's one of those things that will probably be in our landfills for centuries to come. But If you try to decant it into plastic, it will crack. If you try to decant it into glass, you're going to need lab glassware, right? And then because most of the times in situations that we're doing in kinky cons and things like in classes and like that, if it's a cup of liquid nitrogen in styrofoam that falls in that cup of styrofoam ruptures, okay, the liquid nitrogen is spread. I know how to deal with it. And the styrofoam is relatively easy. But if you now have shards of glass, so I don't feel comfortable working with glass, so I tend to work with styrofoam. Metal, you just wouldn't be able to handle it because it would get to the same temperature as the liquid nitrogen. I have heard some people talk about using some of those like insulated metal mugs that on the inside is metal, on the outside is insulation. If you're gonna do it for just a little bit, I think it will be fine. But I'm sometimes when I'm doing classes, I'm bringing people for an hour and a half, 2 hours after the class is over, I just did it at Southeast Leather Fest. And the class was supposed to end at 5:15. 7:15 was when I finally started packing my stuff. So in that case, I don't think that even the plastic on the outside of those thermal mugs would have survived that long.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Be very careful what you're putting it into. I agree with the glass thing. Unfortunately, the idea of breaking something, and it is very possible. That's one thing I've learned with fire is you never think it's going to happen, but the chance of it happening when you least expect it is possible. So we have some very heavy duty metal containers for our fuel that have a lid and that are almost untippable. We did try a big heavy glass container and it wasn't advisable for us in our novice state. And we even have beautiful fire buckets that are made of metal, and they're very cool. They give the whole farm go look. It's quite cool. People are not sure if I'm going up there to milk a cow, if I'm going up there to set someone on fire. Keeps the audience guessing. So it fits in with me. So I quite like that. But I like the reminder just to use the right tool for the job and to consider again the length of time that you're spending with it and what happens if you are longer in the room or something like that. So that was a great tip. I'm so excited, and I hopefully have convinced you to come and do a bit of a class for us at Rain of Fire.
I would be delighted to do it.
As you've really made this kitten's day. I don't think I've stopped grinning. I've been all over the place in this podcast because I'm just so super excited to see what you do with this stuff. I'm sure my listeners are equally excited. I'm sure all my friends that I have spent the entire weekend talking about the fact that I'm interviewing you today and that I get to see and speak to someone who actually has explored this. I'm sure they're going to be equally as excited. As soon as I launch the podcast, you do realize I'm going to individually send them all the podcast link and make them sit down and listen to it. So just a big shout out to all my listeners who give me so much beautiful feedback. I'm thrilled to have you, and I can't wait to put a class together with you and to bring this to everybody so people all over the world can see what you do.
Thank you very much for having me, Ms. Kitten. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Been a pleasure being a part of your podcast. And once again, if anybody wants to know more about liquid nitrogen, feel free to reach out to me on FAT. I'm OzTheThird on FAT.
I'm going to drop Oz's name in the show notes. You can reach out to him today. If you're battling or you need some extra help, reach out to us. We can also put you in contact. We're going to bring you a class of Oz's at Rain on Fire. That's the best thing. Our On Demand is going live this afternoon. People, how exciting. We've spent a month producing some incredible content for you, all the fire safety, all the 101 stuff, the consent, the self-care, the aftercare, all these reminders about personal responsibility, with some fabulous educators, some fabulous moments. Not all of them were successful, so we included the unsuccessful ones in the videos so that you guys had an idea that life is not always perfect and the beautiful pictures you see aren't always what happens. So just some great content. Please have a watch if you've got your tickets. Your links will be out this evening. If you don't have a ticket, I don't know what you're doing with your life. You need to get a ticket. If you need a scholarship, we are very open. We believe education should be for everybody. Please hit up our DMs. We'll happily give you a scholarship to the festival and to our on-demand content. We want you to be able to learn with us and share our excitement, and we don't believe that price should be a barrier to any participation for online education. Yeah, and then just a huge shout out to all my amazing listeners, all my amazing presenters, and my amazing Rain of Blood team. Today is the 1st of July. We are now starting to count down to our festival on the 26th, so less than a month to go. I am always amazed that I get to participate in this and be part of it. I'm really thankful that you guys provide me with a space and that you listen to me. Equally exciting, my podcasts are nearly hitting 20,000 downloads. Guys, that's amazing. Like some strange chick from South Africa is managing to reach all of you. I love that. Send me a DM, send me a note, and keep yourselves warm and stay lit. And lots of love and kitten kisses from my dungeon in South Africa to yours.